Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Nighter Round 1 for the month of March. I am Michael Perry, and as always, I'm pleased to be joined by National Master OK.
Hi, guys.
Before we get started, not many announcements, but this weekend at the castle, we have an exerciser quad. So 3 rounds of game 60 plus 30. Dan Bojay is the TG for that one, so make sure to check that out. Looks like we already have 7 players signed up for that one. A lot of strong players already, too, so if you're a strong player, you're going to get some good competition. And if you're a weaker player, well, not really going to lose any rating, and it's going to be good learning experience. So definitely encourage signing up for that one. It's going to be a good experience and definitely get some good long games in. But yeah, with that being said, I think I'll turn it over to OK for the games.
All right. Well, let's get it started. We already have at least one completed game, and I think we'll go to that before we'll go to the completed games before we go to board order. And right away, we've got a game between Srijan Vaidyanathan and Rihan Sen. Start off here. Okay, so Srijan starts with a d4, and Rihan responds with the Grunfeld and e3, which I believe also Yusupov used to play as white. It's not as weak as it looks, and it had a practical purpose for him since Yusupov also played the Kale. So if you think about it, if someone starts off with a Kale and then the person Fianketos, you don't have to extend your repertoire too much. So this approach makes some sense from that point of view. Rihan goes about attacking the center immediately, which is consistent with the spirit of the Grunfeld.
And just, I don't know if you know who this player is, but I had to look them up, Rihan Sen. Apparently they're 1100. They've just started playing, it looks like, last year. So they've played about 75 games. But yeah, good to see this player playing in Thursday Nighter.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen the name before. And I'm impressed that at the rating level they're willing to play as complicated and combative an opening as a Grunfeld. That says a lot about their confidence level.
And they are a youngster. They looks like they're 9, so gotta watch out. So that means it's no matter what they're rating, it's bad for everyone at the club.
Yes. So this is one of those dangerous kids that we need to look out for. Wow.
Maybe we can. Ooh, why not Queen C6?
Yeah, I'm wondering why not Queen C6? What's going on there? Oh, you know what? Bishop D7 is probably the answer. And the knight still perishes.
Yes.
I'm not sure how. Well, I guess Queen C7 is attacking a pawn, so you get something for the knight, maybe.
Now, yeah, you probably play Bishop to H3. Wow. Black is. I mean, I think this works, and if it does, Black is just playing a really good game.
What did you say Rihan's rating was? Okay.
I know this.
That's Fugazi.
I won't interpret that, but I think I know what you're getting at.
It's Italian for kind of like not authentic. Wow, fake. Really? Wow, this is impressive. So unfortunately, Strija wasn't even able to get the pawn for the piece because he lost it right away with that tactic.
And I
Um,
don't think Bishop. I'm just looking for all the best moves for Black, seeing if Bihan will find them. But I think Knight E4 might have been interesting because I want to play
yes, that
tactics like Bishop G2 and Queen G4, winning the White Knight on F3. But then White plays Queen G3. But now after Knight E4,
ah,
we attack the Queen and take away the G3 square. So this might have been interesting.
mhm. Yeah, this would have been okay. So let's for the sake of argument say we play Queen F4. So we're trying to defend Black's position here. Sorry, White's position here. The Queen F4
Actually, Queen
and
H2 might actually just be good.
oh yeah, Queen H. Actually, Queen H2. Although Queen H2, maybe they respond with this.
Yeah, they get out of dodge.
So maybe I like Queen F4 only because at least it's attacking another piece that
Yeah.
isn't going to be automatically defended and see how. And is defended the knight on F3. So actually, two pieces are being attacked right now.
Yeah.
Whether that um, means so, let's see. How would we respond to that? So if you do Bishop F5, then maybe
Black's still winning, but yeah, Knight E4 doesn't get you much of anywhere.
yeah. Well, let's see. So here, Bishop G4, um, Knight H2, Knight E4, which might be dangerous just because it seems like that Black is complicating for the sake of complication. Because you have to consider what you do after Queen F4, which is threatening the bishop on G4 as well as a knight on. Oh, the bishop on G4 and the knight on E4. However, it looks like Rihan had it all worked out because then bishop H2, bishop E5 happens, and Queen E4 would face this. So then, and Queen G4 meets the same fate. So it seems as if our horribly underrated Rihan found another killer move right here. It's bishop E5. Oh, this is crazy.
Yeah, this is a very strong game.
And at this point, I think Srijan is kind of, I don't know, for want of a better term, punch drunk. He's just, playing by inertia because this position is really, really nasty. And it's almost as if he's looking for a way to give up everything. And checkmate. And I've been there where Srijan was after that, after losing the piece. It's just like, well, let's see exactly what imagination my opponent is going to use to put an end to my resistance type of feeling. But yeah, that's a very well played game by Rihan. And I think if you go back, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name properly, or her name, I'm not even sure. Is it a he or a she? Did it say on the profile?
It didn't. Not that I saw.
Okay. But yeah, after this, so this is a critical moment. H3. So yeah, so um, recognizing tactical themes, tactical motifs is important not just for our own sake in terms of what we can do to the opponent, but also in what the opponent can do to us. And having pieces like this means you should always be on the lookout for a, a forking maneuver like this, which is what eventually Black was able to take advantage of. And at this moment, it's not that clear because, of course, right now the b5 square is covered twice, and this is the only piece attacking it. But with some imagination, which Rihan uses, sorry, I got too many circles there. After this is played and the exchange occurs, all of a sudden there's one piece attacking and one piece defending, and so b5 is valid. And after that, Rihan showed very good technique in converting the position to a win. All right, let's go to the next game here. We've got Nate Hoover versus Robert Donahue, which doesn't have any moves attached. So
Apparently, Robert took one look at Nate and resigned.
Hey, that's a possibility. Discretion being the better part of valor, yeah? I don't know what's going on with there's no clock times to this. I don't know if this game is actually a thing or not.
Let's see. I'm just trying to judge by the moves. I would assume this is a real thing. It looks
all right.
looks somewhat normal.
So this is interesting. So Jason does play Catalan type positions, and I don't know if I've seen Jordan playing Slav, which is what we have here at this move. G3 is becoming a bit more popular, I think, in this position. And D takes C4 definitely has to be Black's most principled approach here. A lot of times Black players will resort to this, which is considered a fairly simple equalizing method. But D6 C4 is saying, okay, you're offering me a pawn, I'm going to take it, and you're going to tell me what you're going to do. And that becomes a battle. Whether White is able to take advantage of his superior development to take advantage of the fact that he might remain a pawn down for a very long time. Black defends b7 pawn, which is useful tactically. And now White starts, well, White already started trying to undermine the pawn structure with a4, and now b3 is the next step in the undermining process. And here, White played bishop a3 with the idea of exchanging of bishops and hopefully taking advantage of the many weak dark squares in Black's position. White played 97, and Black decided he didn't want to exchange off knights. Knight d3 coincidentally also happens to add some influence to the c5 square. And now we get to a critical moment, which I presume was well calculated by Jordan because he calculates these things lightning fast. Black plays the very important pawn break with c5, which also allows for the light square bishops to be exchanged. And it looks like he's giving back the pawn, but with the benefit of um, getting closer to completing his development.
Yeah, I it's an interesting decision because he just wants the castle. For the viewers, his dark square bishop was a bit of a problem, and if he were to just take white's bishop on a3, then the queen takes a3 would be played, and it would cut off black's availability to castle. So he played c5, full well knowing that he would be gambiting the pawn, but it might very well be worth it. But time will tell because you are giving your opponent a pass pawn.
Yes, a pass pawn that might be difficult to corral. But so far, Jason is finishing his development. Now he's now developed all his minor pieces, and Black's king is still stuck in the center, and um, he'll have to take at least an extra move to get things going. And now they're material even. Black is still a move behind in development, which he sorts out with 0-0. And so now we've got symmetrical pawn structure and knight versus bishop.
Yeah, like if this was a
Seems,
grandmaster game, they would play a few more moves and call it a draw. But I've seen Jordan pull off some crazy swindles, and I think he'll
yes.
considering he's a good bit higher rated than Jason, even though Jason's a quite a good player in his own right. I think this will go on for a while, but
No, for sure. This is even if it's an even position, and I don't know that that's the case, but even if it were an even position, it's not drawn. And so,
not at our level.
huh? No, no, not even at the grandmaster level. I can imagine Magnus Carlsen with this position finding a way to outplay 2600 grandmaster.
Perhaps, yes.
Already, um, it looks like the position isn't so symmetrical at this moment. And Jordan's trying to start pushing. The last Jason's last move had a little bit of poison. If Jordan had tried countering on the C file, then he'd be pretty annoyed to deal with knight e7, which would win the exchange for Jason. Jordan sees that and he moves his rook to another file, and a file that actually probably lets him penetrate white's position a bit easier, going to a2. So Jason brings his knight back, and
I think Jordan played g6 because he didn't want rook a2 or rook c8, king g7, king h7, and then knight takes f7.
rook a2, yes. And then he'd have to either go back here,
True, yeah.
which is already putting him under some pressure. After king f3, I think white's at least a little bit better.
Now Magnus has
And
chances.
yes, yes. So g6 was played likely with that in mind, so he would be able to respond to rook c8 with king g7, maintaining contact with the f pawn and not needing to get his bishop pinned on the back rank. I was thinking about this as a possibility.
Yeah, I like it because e4, e5 looks kind of nice.
Yes, yes. E4, E5 would be the next phase of belligerence, I would think. But okay, uh, here, so he's still putting pressure on the bishop in a different way, and wow, all of a sudden his position's looking interesting. But just in time, Jordan is able to um, attack the rook, which means that the bishop is safe for at least a move. And here, Jason goes for the exchange.
I think if Jason was playing someone, maybe even just at his rating, I think he would have played like rook b7 instead of exchanging rooks. Because
Yes,
even though I said it's a dead draw, he slightly improved his position, and he's definitely the one pushing. So I think if he was playing someone who he wanted to win against and felt he had a better chance of winning against, I think he would have played on.
yes, because I mean this position. So if rook check, rook b7, bishop d6, f3, black has questions to answer, and they're not easy answers. Um,
We'll laugh and just watch.
okay, I was afraid. Okay, so
The Magnus
everybody's playing.
Carlsen of the castle.
Okay,
White's still doing fine.
yeah,
So he does have pawns on dark squares now.
he has pawns on dark squares, and the pawns, um, they're not all on one side, but the bishop is still at this moment maybe it's less flexible than the knight, but it does have longer range. So, hmm. Oh, and it just so happens that knight f8 isn't available because of the bishop controlling that square. So it's hard to see how the knight puts pressure on g6.
Uh-oh.
I can't, well, I guess I can tell you how annoying that kind of move can be in a blitz game, for example, where you think you got everything covered and then you miss the most elementary tactic. Well, I'll just attack the pawn on d5. How are you going to defend it? And this is good on Jordan not immediately rushing to take the pawn because then white responds with knight d5 and there's no way to defend e5. So before taking the pawn, he defends his e5 square. So what do you think is happening? Oh, that's what's happening. If knight f3, then bishop there, and if you try to go for the g6 pawn,
Yeah, and most importantly, he's going to put Jason in Zugzwang. So if White
mm-hmm,
tries to play knight g2 there instead,
mm-hmm.
I mean you're just gonna reroute the bishop, put it on like either c1 or d2, and then just move the bishop once, and then White will have to move either the king or knight away from f4.
Yeah, actually, bishop c3 does the trick, right?
Yeah. Oh, because the
Because
knight's
now he has
trapped.
to move. Yeah, the knight's
Knight's trapped,
trapped.
and yeah,
And if something like this, then maybe we step back somewhere.
maybe this isn't so simple.
So let's see. If he goes here, okay. Yeah, we can just attack here. There's no way for
Oh
both
yeah, yeah,
the knight or the knight and king. One of them must move, and once they move, the F pawn drops.
yeah.
Okay. So Jason might have seen that at this moment after this and decided, okay, there's no point fighting anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, this is again why we play the game. It's a drawn position. Oh, it's an equal position, but both parties have to play equally well afterwards. Now I've got a game between Jacob Pikus and David Bocek. See what's going on there. So an English opening, and Black responds with this aggressive system. Interesting. I don't know if this is theory or not, but it is an interesting concept. So you play e3 and then follow up with e4. Um, I guess the idea is that in a way, Black's not been playing the most enterprising moves, and so White can afford the tempo loss with e3 and then e4. Because it just so happens that if Black tries to open up a position, White's already better developed and will probably benefit more from the opening of the position.
And for player profile, I don't know if you're familiar with David Bokek.
Um, I think I've run into I believe I've run into him. Maybe I don't know if I've played him, but I've seen him at events before. I he's not the most active player, but he's a strong one, if I remember properly.
Yeah, I
And
sorry, go ahead.
no, continue.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't familiar with the name, and I went to his profile, and he is 2009, so he's an expert, and
Yeah.
it makes sense. I'm not familiar with him because he's only played two tournaments in the last decade. He played the 2025 Holiday Quickly, and then he played, so that was just a couple months ago, and
Mhm.
then he played the Minnesota Senior Championship in October of last year, and then before that, his
Yes.
last tournament was a Thursday nighter in 2016.
Yes. No, he doesn't. He hasn't played much rated chess. I happen to have played at that senior championship last year, but I think I know him from the old TCCL, the Cities Chess League. I think I've seen his name there before. Yeah, that's probably where I've seen his name and understood that he was a strong player. So we have two strong players in this game, and a lot of political maneuvering here. Now, I don't know after this whether Bishop C2.
Well, sorry, not David, but Jacob did miss a tactic. Instead of knight c3, bishop takes h7 and queen h5.
Well, he needed to prepare it So he needed to prepare it
Oh,
with
the knight.
knight
Okay,
c3,
okay.
and so
I was too busy looking up the player profile. I just saw knight c3 and assumed the knight was on b1. I'm like, why didn't he play bishop h7?
yes,
Okay, that makes sense.
so
Jacob
then
wouldn't miss that.
yes, so then David covers that threat by playing knight f6, and here tactically and strategically is an important question. Does the bishop go back to c2, aiming at black's king side, but leaving his own light square pawns around his king dominated by the enemy bishop, or does he go back to g2 or even h1?
I would go
Um,
g2. What would you take?
I'd probably go with g2 as well. It just seems that there isn't much good that can come from leaving that bishop on h3 um, undisturbed. But
Yeah,
we'll see how things work out.
because black's more attacking than white is, so you have to play a little bit of defense before anything else.
Yes, but David felt the need to play bishop f5. So this maneuver with to exchange off minor pieces. Okay, there's an argument. Does he need to? But he does exchange, and
Knight c
now the threat. Yeah,
knight takes e4 can't be good though.
yeah. I'm not a big fan of that. I think that um,
I I want to go knight g4.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just looking to see if it was safe to play that. Because knight g4, then f3, and then knight retreat somewhere, probably. Um,
I wonder how much time he spent on this.
9 minutes.
That's good time usage.
Yeah, yeah, 9 minutes. And maybe that
I,
was time spent seeing if he could improve his position otherwise.
yeah.
I'm wondering because I'm looking at okay, is d5 possible right here? Um, e takes d, queen takes d, and then d5.
Another move I'm thinking of that I kind of starting to like is h6 because I wanna double on the f file because might as well make use of the half open f file for black. But
Yeah.
knight g5 is always a problem. Uh,
Yes.
and bishop takes h7 is still an issue in certain scenarios. So I think h6 solves all three of those in some manner.
Yeah. Yeah. That might be again. It's often useful to have the opponent spend the tempo to effect exchanges rather than go for them yourself or initiate them yourself. So yeah, so h6 has a lot going for it, I think. And after this, all of a sudden, black had to or felt the need to retreat his bishop. So all we discussed earlier regarding leaving that bishop on h3 becomes moot.
Now we don't like to mention this. We rarely mention a computer evaluation, but I was really curious, and the top two moves are h6 and knight g4. That's all I'll say.
Ah,
So the two moves we looked at.
yes. All right. So we're still finding decent moves then. That's good. So so both sides. So finally, Jacob has all his. Well, he has two remaining minors, and they're both now developed. And so it's still a fight. The center isn't settled yet. Maybe Jacob is considering something like d5, with the hope that if exchanges occur, that he has pressure on d6. Although the downside of that might be that after d5, black could try and close things up with c5, and then it's white needs to do a bit more work to open up the queen side. But that might be my preference if it was white's move right here. Of course, we have to see how black responds. And black played bishop d8. So here, yeah, here I might be tempted to play d5 here.
Yeah, I was just thinking myself, what does white want out of the position? Because, you know, I think you would probably agree that black's slightly preferable just because of the F file being half open and white's king is a little bit weaker. So it's a pretty close game. So does white want to open or close it? I think it's an interesting call and I'm not convinced one way or the other.
Yeah, it's I think if white wants to open it is to start fighting on the queen side. And the question is, how do you do that? And the one downside I mentioned about d5 is this, which means that white will have to work harder to open up the queen side. The other question though is, does can how quickly can black whip up an attack on the king side? And I think maybe ideas like this, maybe this rook comes here, queen here.
Yeah,
Um,
that could be it. I think that's pretty slow though. I'm wondering if like h5 and h4 could be a quicker
mhm,
option. And maybe that might force white to play h4 themselves, and then that's
mhm.
kind of weakening.
Yeah, that's also a plan to consider and not a bad one. I think yeah, so the question for white at this point is how do we deal with the center, or do we leave the tension and activate another unit, like maybe rook ad8 or something? Uh, Jacob decided to capture, which coincidentally also opens up an attack against the a7 pawn.
I
And
like it
now
though.
with
I do think it needed the more I talk myself into it, I do think he needed to open up the position. And
yes,
now it's easier to trade rooks, and which I think he wants to do.
and he also tactically has um, two threats right now, right? He's starting queen a7 and queen d6. And unlike with d5, where there's the risk of black closing the position, with d takes e5, the position is opening. And it might seem counterintuitive, but white needs to get his pieces into the game. And closing the game in the center just gives black a free hand to play on the king side. So this, I think, was a good decision. That seems a little bit double-edged. This f4 business. Uh, yeah, because, well, for one, rook takes e3 seems legal and maybe even good. Let's see. So if rook takes e3, something is getting pinned along this diagonal. The question is what, right?
Yeah.
Um, and is that an advantage or not is the other question. So say rook e3 is played, bishop here. Um,
White should be
yeah.
holding on with queen e4.
So yes, queen e4 is probably the way to go because
Or maybe not
um,
queen e4 because I think there's queen f5. What I was initially thinking was, okay, we play queen d2, and then I'm like, ooh, how about queen e4 and not let black even try to put something on the e file. But if queen f5 here, we can't play queen takes f5 because bishop e3 is check, and
exactly.
now it's a bit troublesome.
Yeah. Now maybe he plays here, but then we can do bishop and maybe queen check.
And at very least, we
afterwards.
win c4 in that line, probably. Yeah.
Yes, but I thought Queen E4 was good because it avoided another trick that Black has in a position. Say after Queen D3 or Queen D2, Rook takes um, is adding a pawn to the kitty, and
Do you want to
yeah,
show
it's not
do
looking
you want to show
comfortable.
what happens if they take?
Oh, yeah. There's, um, that's one possibility. Um, and if here, then we have an interesting checkmate with the queen. The queen's power is that it has a little bit of bishop in her, right? So, so yes, that's why rook takes f4 would not. Sorry, a queen d3 or queen d2 would not be sufficient. It's another pawn lost, and so yeah, I don't know, but this seemed like another approach by David, which I think is equally valid. It's just a transposition of moves, it appears. Um, and in fact, you know what? This might even be better because now with bishop b6 immediately, White can't even consider queen e4.
Yes, true. Because that line we looked at where White's probably holding on with King F2, or yeah, King G2, yeah.
Yes, and now White doesn't even have that possibility, and now he gets to put pressure rook, via rook e8. Now I don't know. Looking ahead, if let's see how this goes. So rook e8, rook e1, rook e3, queen e6. So this is where we are in the live game, and it looks like Jacob's suffering a bit here. Maybe more than a bit because c4 is hanging. Um, and it seems difficult to get out of that pin. Maybe the king needs to try and get out of the pin immediately.
You know, I'm not even sure if this was the best for Black. It could be, but because if yeah, because I still like your Rook F4 idea, even here. I think he should have
Mm-hmm.
played this,
Yeah, yeah. I
because
think this was.
it wins a pawn, and obviously we're still down material, but we're always going to take back on E3. Um, and White's still stuck. But if we go back to the live position, um, even though it looks like Black is so if Black plays Queen takes C4, I think White can get so greedy as to play Queen takes D6. Okay, he made a move,
Oh yeah.
but
Well,
but
he made a move. Yeah, queen e4.
and if he played bishop E3, Queen E3, Queen C4, then we made him on E8. So
Yes.
I'm not I'm not fully convinced that this is going to get him. You know, it's a draw, but not as good as Rook F4 because now we probably play like B3 and everything's all right.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I would personally play rook f4 here. Um, it just seems like white white really doesn't have good options here. Say they try to escape the pin. This is already doomsday. And if they play something like this instead, then we now have rook e4, so we can effect the exchange of stuff. And in this variation, white is going to be pawn down. I don't know. Is it possible to play? This seems crazy. Yeah, that's not working. That's not. So yeah, so rook takes a 4 might have been a better way. The way the game went, we have this, and I don't know if queen c4 might have been a better way here. Maybe it doesn't make much difference because it's queen takes d6.
I wouldn't even risk it with queen c4. I'm starting to like white.
Hmm.
It's probably still technically a draw, but yeah, yeah.
But I suppose, I don't know. This is
I I think just b3 here because queen e4 I don't think does too much.
no.
Like what's
That's why I
it
thought queen
doing?
c4. That's why I thought if you're gonna do it, I mean, this pin is still unbreakable. Capture the pawn. At least your chances at the end game
Yeah,
can't be worse. Yeah.
and we can look at this. So what if queen d6?
So queen takes d6. So first of all, oh, I guess there is a check on e6. Oh, there's no check on e6 if we play here.
But now we have,
But there's a check. There's a check here that could be problematic.
and now we're gonna play queen e8, and this is scary.
Yeah, this is getting
Oh, that's
kind of
mate.
hectic.
Wait, no, that's not mate. E6 is covered, but still, we don't
Yeah,
want to do that.
yeah, e6 is covered, but I think queen a2 might be too materialistic when the king's life is in danger. Excuse me. So maybe we play.
And I guess it's an maybe I'm slightly too um uh favorable towards
Excuse me.
white here because it looks scary for black's king, but it's really not because white can never go like pawn hunting on b7 or what have you because then black will not just take the rook on e3 but actually gang up and win the rook for free. So
Yes.
I'm still this is just fine, but I guess queen e4 is fine too.
Yes. Well, let's see. So how this is where we are, and um, Jacob is thinking of what he's going to play next. Psychologically, um, Black still has initiative, if not objectively, because White is kind of constrained, and um, every attempt to lash out seems foiled at the moment. But B3 might be a way of just hitting the ball back over the net. So let's see what Jacob comes up with. We'll go over to Thomas Babcock, National Master, versus Noah Stewart, and go to where it all began with a Spanish opening. Oh, okay. I was getting suspicious. So often when Black um, doesn't play d6 early, you have to start wondering as the white player whether Black is intending to unleash the martial attack with the d5 pawn sack. Um, but it seems in this case, Noah was just um, messing with Thomas. Now, 95 goes into the time-honored Chigorin approach.
Thomas is blitzing out moves.
Yeah. Well, okay. He's probably played this thing since before he could read. Um, so this is all standard fare for him.
Yeah, he's playing it very well. I don't know. I don't know theory to this extent, but I'm guessing
Hmm.
D5 is just player's choice, if you will.
Yes. So actually, I guess I don't follow the trends of Ruy Lopez much, but I know that at some point, and I wasn't there for this argument back in the '60s and into the '70s. There was discussion as to White's best approach, and under the influence of Karpov, more people came to conclusion that D5, closing the center and making this dude feel uncomfortable, was the way to go. This is Karpov's approach. Fischer usually preferred playing D takes C5 or D takes E5, basically having this sort of pawn structure and then maneuvering this knight here and then either here or here, queen here, and keeping the position a bit more open. So we have that, and now there. C4 is kind of important where black, I believe, wants to find a square for his knight, because otherwise the knight's going to be pretty miserable on A5 with nothing to do. And at least with this way, Noah's getting his knight into C5 with some pressure on white's E pawn.
Yeah, I like this position for White.
Yeah, it seems white is the one with more potential for sure in this position.
I probably would have played H4, H5 maybe already, but I guess that does lend to Bishop G4, which could be annoying.
Yes, this might be fairly annoying. Excuse me.
And a good showing that as soon as a pawn leaves, you have to look for the squares that it left behind.
Yes, exactly. So, and um, I didn't calculate it, but it seems as if it's not working yet. But maybe white didn't want to have to bother analyzing the possibilities of a knight takes d5 tactic. So he retreats his bishop, and it's also possible that he would like to play bishop c5 at some moment, and then followed by d6, or bishop c5 followed by capturing the pawn on e5. And there's no really decent discovery from black's point of view. So then black escapes with his knight to a4.
Maybe we prepare F4 now.
That's what I think Thomas is after by playing rook f1.
Yeah, maybe he's really slow playing it. I don't know if we need a rook on F1, but maybe.
I think he's slow playing it.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to do with, yeah.
He's a veteran. Yeah.
Now we understand queen e2, maybe if he's intending to capture back with the queen, or if he just wants to have the queen overprotecting the g4 pawn when it gets there. Aha. This is a very, very patient approach. And in some ways, it's psychologically difficult to be commanding the black pieces here, because white's just maneuvering around, seemingly doing nothing, but you know the storm is gathering, and meanwhile black doesn't have any ready counterplay. And so when Thomas plays knight c2 with the idea of maybe now supporting f4, Noah, who's been kind of in defensive mode for many moves, now decides to lash out with f5. Let's see what happens here. Um,
So I'm laughing, but you'll see in a moment. It's not in this game. It's yeah,
oh,
we'll get to it. I couldn't help myself.
okay. So this position is turning out okay for white so far, but black is also up to the challenge and isn't has managed to improve knows to improve his pieces, and white really hasn't got a breakthrough just yet, I don't think. So this position is still unclear, and let's proceed to the next battle. So you have David's Ettelbauers versus Simon Popkin, and Simon doesn't play that much, although I think I've played him before once. You've probably played him too, Michael?
Yeah, I played him once. I believe at the St. Cloud Open in 2023 or yeah 2023. Uh, and he won that game. I think
Oh,
he's
okay.
he's around 1900 2000.
Actually, now that I think of it, did he have an upset in that St. Cloud Open?
I think so, but I don't
Yeah,
remember
somehow.
against who.
Yeah, somehow I thought he had an upset win against a master in that tournament. I mean, he's someone who can be very dangerous chess wise. So now we have a King's Indian fianchetto. Well, almost King's Indian. It's more King's English. Um, Interesting. David seems to be comfortable in his position. So right at this moment, White's has a space advantage. Black's knight is slightly out of play. Black hasn't castled yet, but there's no breakthrough at the moment, and so I would say White is maybe a little bit better.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I mean, with Bishop G4, Simon is putting pressure on the knight on E2, which by extension puts pressure on the pawn on D4. And so Davids has to decide how he's going to deal with the tension there. He might not have wanted to play D5 because that leaves the C5 square open for the knight on A6. And maybe his idea is, okay, if the bishop takes on E5, then black has a backward D6 pawn. If the pawn takes on E5, then the bishop on G7 is automatically restricted, and white can gain a tempo by attacking the queen on the D file with one of his rooks. So that might be the motivation there. And so D takes E5 happens, and then rook AD1. And okay, so these sort of games are kind of interesting because okay, black isn't doing badly, but white, it's almost like a squirrel um, accumulating all these nuts, these small little advantages here and there. So he has a bishop pair, a bit of a space advantage, and at least black has got castled now. But the question is, how does white take advantage of or how should I say, improve his position further? F4 looks mighty ambitious. I'll say that. Um, I'm not sure he has enough control over the position to do this. but I don't know that he doesn't. We'll see how things progress. Bishop takes f4. That
Yeah, it's like, what did you, if you play f4, and I'm definitely guilty of this, but you should have a plan. You shouldn't just move your f pawn, and uh, definitely a dangerous pawn to move if you don't, especially if
yes,
you're white, because black usually plays f5. It's just a common plan in the King's Indian and similar type structures. But for white, you usually play it as an offensive move because you want to get some type of advantage. But yeah, for white to play it here, you got to ask, why am I doing this? And after takes, bishop takes, I only think it helps white as long as black doesn't blunder bishop d6.
yes, yeah. I mean, white has now acquired an isolated king pawn, not the most common isolated pawn in these sort of positions, but um, it might become an issue. Again, we'll see how Simon avoids the bishop d6 tactic, which he does relatively simply. And knight c5. Now the knight's back into the position, and he's putting some pressure on the e pawn. Queen c2. Bishop d4. Wow.
Hmm.
This is an interesting one. So David's sacrifices the exchange to try and grab the initiative, which actually in some ways would be consistent with a famous chess player from David's country of origin. I think he's from Latvia. And so this would be not exactly fully Tal-like, but it will be in the spirit of Tal. Mature means much less than activity. So let's get things rolling.
Also, in the spirit of New York native Levy Roseman.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sorry,
Yes,
I had to point that one out.
quite right. So here, it just happens to work because otherwise, if bishop takes c5 wasn't followed by queen takes c5, that would have been dropping material. But now it's actually a valid threat, this rook d3. So he responds with queen f2, attacking the knight. And now knight e6. And it doesn't seem to me like I'm not sure that white has enough compensation, but you should never, ever underestimate the bishop pair in these open positions. So then queen bishop h3 happens, rook ed8. So now black has control over the d file.
It's definitely a position, and I think if we want to get into the psychology of the matter, not that I'm a psychology expert, but I think sometimes why white will sacrifice like that um, is not even because they see a winning line or they see or they necessarily think that they're winning, but simply because it's easier to play. Like
Yes,
when he sacked the rook for the piece in the pawn, it's just not even easier to play, but more fun to play. Like for a few moves, white just has a more pleasant position, and not because he's better, he's probably worse, but his moves come easier, and black needs to play a little bit of defense.
yes, yes. And for most players, defense is not as much fun as offense. So yeah, that seems to be the operative principle. So now Simon has a material advantage. He has control of the d file, which, by the way, bishop g4, I think, was meant to avoid the exchange on d1. And it just so happens that at this moment, white doesn't have any direct concrete threat. And so Simon increases his positional edge by freezing, using the one pawn to freeze these two, which could be useful for the endgame. Bishop b2 occurs, and rook d7. And at least Davids is getting some harassment value out of his bishops. And that seems a bit ominous for White's chances because now Black's knight has an anchor on d4, and he might need to consider giving up one of those bishops for that anchored knight. Very enterprising. Okay. Well, you can't play knight d4 right away unless you want to give up your rook. Ah, I've got counterplay. So Davies is not giving up on this one easily. Wait a second, what's going on here? Why was rook g6 played?
He must have been really worried about queen g4. But oh yeah, queen g4 because obviously if king f8, bishop h6, and queen g8, and if king king h7 or king h8, we okay f7.
Oh, got it. So the line, say he played something. We'll just say this is not dropping a pawn. So white would play queen here. If king f8. Oh, this isn't working though because bishop h6
Oh yeah.
falls to this. So unless wait. Maybe the idea is that after this, now
Oh yeah, this
this
works
can
anyways.
happen.
Oh duh. That was some horrible calculation on my part. Oh, and queen c8 to top it all off.
Yes. Well, of course, queen c8 wouldn't be as strong if we didn't find the really bad b7 to b5, but the point is, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So okay, so that's probably what rook g6 is about. So he's willing to give back some material to quiet the bishop pair. And all of a sudden, Davids is a pawn up, but he has weak pawns on c4 and c4, e4, g3, and b2. Um, and Simon's pieces are maybe a little bit more active. Okay, so now that we've reached material equality.
I think queen h6 should have been tried perhaps a couple moves ago instead of rook e1. Because if queen
So
h6,
here, queen h6.
if queen takes e4, we checkmate. And yes, this is
This endgame,
preferable.
I have no confidence for white in this endgame.
Maybe it's interesting because if black gets too greedy, do we get our rook to the h file and like let's say queen g5, or maybe we shouldn't even. Yeah, we'll play queen g5. Then it's black.
So queen g5. So let's say we play all right, let's say we play queen rook c4.
Now rook f6.
Okay, that's annoying.
Yes. So the question is king h7.
King h7. Oh, wait a second. Do we miss something like this?
Oh, yeah, let's not do.
So let's not do rook c4. Um, so let's see. And even rook e4 falls for the same tactics. So yeah, actually rook h6, a queen h6 seems to um, be a thing. So yeah, how does black play here?
Yeah.
So if here,
I think the line we looked at was interesting because after King H7, it looks scary for black, but I didn't see a win for white yet.
we have to figure out what we're playing right now. So maybe we play. Oh, actually, this is because white's a pawn up here,
Yes. Yeah. Queen
so he has
H6
to do.
is definitely a good move
Yes, queen h6 I think is a better idea than rook e1.
because yeah, we should be hanging on to the pawn.
Yeah, it's almost like David's changed gears. So he's playing for activity, and then all of a sudden, well, pawns matter too, and then he defends a pawn that black really in the other line wouldn't be comfortable taking.
Well,
King's a fighting piece. What's your problem?
right?
So, of course, now the king has to figure out what it's doing with itself because rook f8 is on the docket. So he runs back with king e2, rook f8, queen f6, and it is a mess. However, I kind of like black's position here.
I think black's winning.
Yeah,
Queen D2, Queen F1, Queen F2. It's white didn't have to bring their
yeah,
king to the center of the board.
yeah. This was a bit too much. This king g2, king f3, because then all of a sudden he has all these tactical issues, and so Simon's able to improve his position while threatening the king. And yeah, I think black is likely to win that one. All right, let's see what happened between Eddie and Norman.
And I did get informed, thanks to Eddie, that the game between Suijan and Rihan, if I'm saying that
Mhm.
right, that is actually flipped. So Suijan won that as
Oh,
as black. Yeah. So
okay,
which
okay.
perhaps makes a bit more sense.
That makes a bunch more sense. At least from a rating standpoint, coming into the game, that because yeah, some of those ideas were um, really, really crazy good for an inexperienced player to find. But okay, that makes more sense. So okay, let's take a look at Eddie versus Norman. It starts off with e4 and Italian game with bishop e7 being the Hungarian. I used to play that when I was little, and now we've kind of transposed into a kind of Philidor, I guess.
Hmm.
Um,
I've experimented with this myself as black, and I don't I don't like it. It's too passive for my taste. I think it's playable for some players, but I'm a bit too of an aggressive and tactical player to play this.
Makes sense. Now, this 0-0. Again, I don't know if this is all well, with the king in the center, maybe you can't afford to do this sort of um adventurism with b5 just yet.
Probably not. Maybe bishop d5. Um,
Yeah, this might not be just ready yet. Oh, actually, okay. We should probably, yeah, this is probably premature because after bishop f6, for example, oh, actually, maybe 0-0. We can actually do that. And now bishop f6, and white isn't maybe white isn't thoroughly happy about this position. Um, Although bishop f4, queen d2, rook d1, white should be okay here. So maybe b5 is just not well timed. And Eddie's usually well prepared at his openings. Um, so okay. Oh, this is funny.
that's the second time tonight that a position we've looked at has come to fruition.
Yes. Wow, we so
Oh, come on, Eddie. You
almost
do.
got we
We wanted
almost
to play
guessed it.
queen d4. Yeah, come on. But
Well,
he
the
very well.
difference,
I was going to say he very
yep,
well might be right, but I think there's actually. I mean, there's some merits to it, perhaps, but it seems like it kind of wastes a tempo. Like he wants to take with the knight, but you're the advantage is that maybe you're taking with a better piece, but the disadvantage is that it took you an extra move to do so.
yes. And the other disadvantage is the knight. So say bishop b7, as happened in the game, right? Knight takes d4 allows bishop takes d5. And so unless I mean, I think it might make some sense anyway to get the knight over to the king side because the knight on c3 wasn't so hot. Um, and so maybe it ends up not being a loss of tempo because it's going to play knight e2 anyway. But yeah, I think just taking queen d4 and remaining flexible because maybe the knight wanted to go to e4 instead of e2, you know? Wow. Norman's getting some play here. Did he actually just win a pawn?
Um,
I
yeah.
think he did. So, all right, Eddie has his work cut out for him in this game. It's a pawn down. Hmm. You know how a position starts to get a certain bad smell to it? When he played Bishop G7, I guess had that, I don't know, maybe spidey sense that, okay, that move is going to be troublesome.
That's called 30
And
years of experience. Okay.
I
Or
suppose,
how many ever years you've played? If I'm probably
yes.
off.
No, it is, yeah, that move is bad. And for folks wondering, the idea is if Norman tries to take the offered bishop, then white checkmates with queen h8. Meanwhile, the bishop still needs protecting, and if he were to try f5 to allow the queen to cover this away, um, I think that this might work. Let's see. Let's take a look. King here.
But yeah, F5 is definitely the best move for black.
Yeah, I think f5 is the way to go because at least here he's not losing. He's not losing the pawn with zero compensation. With f6, as was played in the game, he's just losing the pawn and still gets the same kind of position, except for he's a pawn down compared to f5. So, and that's not good because of the pin of the queen. So it's an interesting tactical point. So we'll walk through it a little bit. King here, I think, has to be played. By playing queen of7, you're blocking the check. But if you do a quick count, you see that this bishop is attacked by 1, 2, and defended only once. The reason being, the queen isn't really a defender; it's a poser as a defender because its main job, it has to stick to the f7 square. So now white takes advantage by winning a piece for free. And being that Eddie is so Eddie isn't playing around and forces exchange of queens on his terms. And now the position is just really bad for black. And this makes it kind of worse because now he gains an extra pawn. And then because any other move is made, he now wins an extra exchange. And now he's a complete rook up. And this would be child's play for a player of Eddie's caliber. Yeah, this was so actually Norman was doing okay until, well, I wouldn't say okay, he was maybe a little bit worse, but um this bishop g7 was definitely not great. But he could have still gotten himself some reprieve at playing f5 instead of f6. And then following up with this. And I don't know. I mean, I think Norman probably consolidates here, like rook f8. And yeah, he might be able to take his extra pawn to the bank. But that was not to be. Let's go on to Maxwell. Now, is it, I think you corrected me last time. Is it Smigel?
Smeagol, I'm pretty sure.
Smeagol. Smeagol, okay. So, which is, I think, what I said last time was Smigel. I should know better. Anyway, so we got Maxwell versus Drew Johnson. And this is our first Sicilian of the night, I think. I was thinking this is doable. So white is playing as if they're in a normal dragon with his bishop e2, which used to be pretty popular in an actual normal dragon. This bishop e2, and then you play f4. But then it turned out that it wasn't anywhere near as ferocious as the Yugoslav, and then Yugoslav then took over as white's main approach. The problem is this is not a normal dragon because the pawn on d7 is still on d7. And this is kind of the idea of the assimilated dragon, is you're trying to get d7, d5 in one move rather than have to work towards it. And with bishop e2, that allows d5 to happen right away.
Hmm.
And after the dust clears, we have an endgame which isn't drawn by any means. Um, there's actually a bit of play here because there's some um, asymmetry in the pawn structure. White has a queenside pawn um, majority, 3 versus 2. Black has a kingside pawn majority, 4 versus 3. Who can advance their pawns quicker and more effectively will be a part of the equation. Fortunately for Black, Black's position is pretty compact, so White doesn't have any major entry points. Um, as White here, I would probably consider Bishop f3. The main reason being keeping Black's bishop from uh, immediately developing. Although even with that, maybe there's something to be said for, you know what, two can play that game. And if White plays here, then we have Rook here, and then we take the pawn on b2. So Bishop f3 might not even be that much of a deterrent. Maybe Rook d4 and plan on doubling the rooks on the d file. But Rook d2 serves the same purpose in terms of doubling rooks.
And by the way, just a quick mention, I was looking through the Masters database, and just to kind of like show I know it's a stereotype maybe, but just how far opening preparation has gotten in this day and age and how much technology there is available to everyone.
Mhm.
As far as move 14, Rook D2, there were still two games in the Masters database. So,
Oh,
um,
really?
yeah, it just goes to show you how, like these are solid players, especially Drew, I believe,
Mhm.
around 1800 or 1750, or somewhere in that range. Maxwell
Yeah.
Spiegel, I'm sure will continue to improve, but they just played 14 moves, like two 2300s, and it looks like a 2200 and a 2300. So, just an interesting point there.
Yes. Quite. So this position is, I think, I get the impression Black doing a little bit, is making a little bit more progress in improving their position. I mean, yes, White has doubled his rooks on the d file, but there still isn't an entry point. Maybe Rook d8. Maybe Rook d8 needs to be played, and that might have been the motivation behind playing c3, because now the c pawn doesn't need defending by the rook. And in general, when you have a light square bishop, it's often the case that putting your pawns on dark squares is better. So bishop d5 and bishop f5 and bishop b7 and rook c7 and bishop f3. And White hasn't really achieved much with that maneuver. I mean, Black hasn't achieved terribly much, but I think psychologically, Black is doing well here. And after that rook move, um, wow, Drew's playing an interesting game here. I like his approach. He's just gradually, bit by bit, improving his position. And Maxwell is trying to use some tactical threats to keep things going, but structurally, um, Black's position seems to have been improving. Now, at this moment, I think he has to consider f4. This rook e3 is not. This here seems like the way to take advantage of the loose bishop on e6.
I think there's Bishop C4 though.
Here and here. Oh, but then there's here now, I
Well,
suppose.
not even that, but just taking. Because
Taking now?
bishop, yeah, I mean it's equal material still, but if bishop d3, then rook, yeah, and king h6. If bishop d
Oh, there's king. Yes.
if bishop d3, just rook e3, and I mean that, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, yes, that's a good point. So maybe rook up, maybe that's the idea behind rook e3 is to avoid the tempo
Yeah, kind of
before
playing
that.
for a trick, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And besides, rook e3 also opens up to allow his bishop to get back into the game via one of the other diagonals. So bishop d5, bishop f3, bishop c4. So white really wants to exchange off bishops. Hmm. Excuse me. Yikes. That'll hurt.
Sorry.
Just like that. This guy's in trouble. Wow. That was kind of sneaky. So G5. I kind of figured that was his idea, but I didn't realize how strong it was until he played it, and all of a sudden there's no way of saving material. If he tries rook e2, rook e2, and then here, then he can just simply play here, or maybe even more um, simplifying is rook takes, and then he gets a bishop up for nothing. So the best possibility was to give up the exchange, which Maxwell does, but then he loses the b pawn. And now after rook d2, rook dd2, this is not looking good. All right. Well, that's a good game by Drew. Again, I liked how he methodically improved his position once it got to the end game, and then he was alert to a tactical possibility, taking advantage of the skewer. So that was a good one. Juan Carlos Perez versus Kevin Landman. A King's Indian Samish variation, which you played, right? Or you still play? Oops, I think your audio might be a bit off. Yeah, it's still a bit wonky. Still having some technical difficulties. Sorry, folks. Well, okay, let me go back a bit. And so you have a King's Indian, same-ish variation, and then white plays g4 a little bit early, but black responds with what appears to be enterprising sacrifice of a piece for two. Maybe it might become three pawns. One idea here is queen h4 check. So white escapes the center, and then queen h4, which has a threat embedded, which is, say, for example, if white were to play bishop here, now there's knight takes, queen takes, and bishop h6, which would be painful. So white wisely takes the king away from the diagonal. And then f5 happens, which again is a very interesting way of playing it. So black has given up material, and in return wants to open up the position as quickly as possible to get their pieces as active as possible. White decides to respond with bishop g5, pushing the queen away, avoiding the exchange of knight for bishop. And then here, there is an argument maybe in favor of considering locking down the center until we have developed our other pieces. But the downside of, say, a move like d5 is black could have either h6 immediately or f4 with h6 to come as possibilities. I think h6 immediately would be uncomfortable to meet. The bishop here, and maybe rook f7. And this just can't be that great. So white plays bishop h3, keep the position fluid, and now the rooks are connected, so that's a good thing. Could potentially be looking at exchanging off that really annoying knight on g4, but now this happens, and now things get a little bit more interesting. White captures on d4, and I'm kind of eyeballing this, but I don't know that this is working well for. I don't know that this is working well for white because I guess there's even this, um, and all of a sudden black is the one who's material up. So white plays knight takes d4, and the sting at the end of the tail is knight f2, and all of a sudden black is going to be material up because there's no way he won't be losing at least an exchange here. And so the smoke hasn't fully cleared. Clears after this move. And so,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. I guess a simple reset was what did it, but who knows?
Okay. So yeah, so there's been some enterprising play in the middle game here. And we've got a material imbalance of knight, rook, and two pawns for two minor pieces.
Hmm.
And so that material balance has now become rook and pawn for two minor pieces, which might be a little bit more in favor of white, but um, finding targets, getting to attack them.
I think there's a lot of just moving around in my opinion.
Yes,
I think maybe just a4 and b5 and try to create a pass pawn is preferable.
yes. I think white eventually came to that conclusion. Although, okay, maybe b5 might have been motivated more by trying to open up the d5 square for the knight, but it helps in the queenside push anyway.
It's an added benefit. Oh yeah, look at this. This
Yes,
looks lovely.
yes. Now all of a sudden, I am very happy to be behind the white pieces in this position. And
Oh,
then that did make things better.
I mean that knight's so good you could consider not even taking.
Yes, that is true. And here, okay, maybe rook f6 right away, but I suppose rook f6 might be, well, no, because if you play here, you just capture. And a4, a5, and then a5, a6. But okay, this is not the only way. This is also a good way. And now the rook doesn't even have the opportunity to get active. He either exchanges or he puts himself in the bush over on g6. And now white is making progress. Oofta. That's mean-spirited. Okay, so now Kevin's a full piece up, but he has a minute left compared to Juan's 13 minutes. And those pawns on the king side, maybe they are quick runners. So there's still some drama left in the position. H4 might, it's tough. So of course D6 can't be protected. And I guess the problem with playing G4 is that white could ignore the D6 pawn and just come back here and win one of the kingside pawns. So Juan tries H4, and knight in. And so correctly, Kevin understands he doesn't really need extra material here. He just needs to keep those pawns from moving until he can get his king in, or maybe find a breakthrough with his pawns on the queen side. And now everything is working. Because if you go back here, it might have been tempting to play h3 immediately. The problem is black could then play here, and the knight might be too far away to get back. We could calculate it and see. Let's see here. Yeah, the knight's not getting back on time to prevent the promotion. But by playing it the patient way, getting the knight back nearer to the king side before playing h3, now he could allow that breakthrough and the knight's nearby, close enough to prevent bad things from happening. And now this is just routine cleanup by Kevin, who is experienced enough in those sort of positions. So now we have a couple more games in. So they've corrected Rihan versus Srijan. And then we have, this did not have moves before. So now we have the Hoover versus Donahue game. I think we've covered all the other games, right? Was there a game that we left unfinished?
Let me quick check. I was going through all the games we hadn't gone through. There's only a couple of them that we haven't gone through, like extra games, if you will, from like the open section and that are beyond the
We
8 ball.
hadn't finished Jacob versus David.
Yes, correct.
So when we left, they were here. And then that happened. And so the king comes up. Ah. So in this position, I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but queen takes. And king here. And I think it probably is ending in a draw, but at least this might be technically a better way of getting into the endgame. Playing it this way, allowing that, I suppose that forces a draw, which would be what we'd obtain in the other line too. There's no escaping the perpetual. So that was a well-fought game. I still think back here, rather than rook e8, rook takes f4 would have been superior to rook e8. All right, so we have that, and then we left Thomas versus Noah, and okay, yeah, we left it around here. We were giving praise to White's position, I think around here. Was it? Yeah, I think we left after Queen G4.
Both
And
sides are
felt
playing. Both sides are playing
huh?
without a piece.
Yeah,
The two knights are just kind of chilling on the beach.
yep. Yes. So already there are some danger signs because of this guy. Shadow attacked 3 times and defended twice. And Black then plays bishop h6, exchanging off the bishops. And it's important to note the bishop on c1 is um, currently employed defending the pawn on b2. So when the bishops are exchanged, white all of a sudden has an extra defensive liability to consider. And it also just so happens that if white initiates the exchange, as happened in the game, there's an attack on the queen, but there's also now the uncovered attack on f2. So this position very quickly has Noah putting Thomas on the back foot. I don't know if I like that. Because it isn't easy to see how, if at all possible, white is able to activate that knight. He's left himself. So with the position here, you have a bishop which might have some potential against a knight which might have some potential. But if you look at the potential routes of the two knights on the queen side, the black knight definitely has more potential. This can get to c5 and then to d3 or b3, while the white knight, it's harder to see how it activates itself. So then by exchanging off, that kind of accentuates the difference between the two knights on the queen side. And yep, Noah's quick to improve his knight's position. Yeah, this is, you can already feel that the tide has turned in black's favor here. Well, I guess for one thing, there's a pawn that's hanging on d5, although you can't take it right away because of knight e7. But with knight f4, now there's a threat to the weak pawn on d5, and there are storm clouds coming up against white's king, sorry. Small threat, which wasn't answered by the last move. And so black is winning a pawn, and cute. The idea being that if the king takes, then this leads to mate in 2. So black avoids the queen exchange for a move. And interestingly, after what Thomas might have had as his bailout idea with g3, because now he's attacking 2 pieces, and it turns out that queen f3 has the same idea. If capture, then capture. And okay, maybe in this situation, he could say, well, at least I got a rook for it, but he still gets mated in 1 after that. So this is, and I think Thomas's time situation didn't help, right? Because there's a time advantage that keeps increasing here, but it's at the same time, it's very focused, good play by Noah. Yeah, this is just.
I think at
Noah,
some point he had to go g3 and king g2 instead of f3. I just think this whole f3 g2 h3 pawn setup with the knight on f4 is so deadly. You need to play g3, king g2, and pray. I mean, you're obviously worse, but at least now the knight can't get to f4, and you're out of your king's in a slightly better position.
Yes, it's tough though. So in this position, so say after queen f7, if he plays g3, there's already this.
Yeah, but at least queen g5 and maybe we're kind
Yes,
of. I mean, queen
there is
g5
that.
and knight d3. They're threatening
Maybe
to.
maybe play 93 immediately, as happened in the game. Or no, this was a little similar to what happened in the game. Um, threatening queen d. Well, still not threatening queen d5. So let's see. I you know, regardless of the exact moves, I think in general you're correct that this pawn structure with a knight, it's coming to f4 is just asking for it. Um, so yeah, that was a very very well played game, I think, by Noah. The second half of the game, he just took it over and coordinated his pieces really nicely. And after the exchange of bishop for knight on f5, um, it was obvious whose knight was more relevant. And then his combining the aggressive posture of his pieces with sharp tactical awareness, I think, was also a nice point that should be mentioned. And oh, by the way, just for completeness, if here this is checkmate, and if here, then you have this check, and after this, then you have this checkmate. So it was going to be checkmate anyway. All right. Let's see. I think that might be the last one. Maybe there's one more.
No, there's two moves we didn't see in that game.
Oh,
David's
okay.
out of ours. We knew it was pretty much over after the queen f5 or whatever it was, but
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So we left here, and so David's plays a check, rook f7, and there are no more checks. Oh, and he just closes the door on his king. So now this is checkmate. All right. Well, that's a good counterattacking game by Simon. And let's see. I thought, yeah, I don't want us to leave without looking at a Robert Donahue game.
I
So
think
let's
that's where
see.
we should finish the night. Yeah, and that's what I was laughing about earlier. So I think we should definitely look at it briefly.
Okay. Let's quickly go. So d4, d5, d4, c5, which is one way of entering into Benoni, unless white is comfortable playing e4 with an invitation to the Smith-Morra gambit, which is what happens.
It gets worse.
So white's two pawns up. Black's king has lost casting privileges, but black is better developed for the moment. So I suppose there is some compensation, but then after bishop e6, at the very least, at the cost of a pawn, white might be able to force exchange of a bunch of stuff. And now he doesn't, he's not allowed to have the extra pawn. Or he can't claw back a pawn because now white is able to consolidate. So let's see. Obviously, the pawn can't be taken, and Robert is um, preparing to put his bishop on b7, most likely. Queen f4. So it looks as if that might, in some ways, be trying to set up for in anticipation of white casting queenside. I don't know if that prevents it. Apparently, Nathan was not impressed and says, "Okay, what do you got?" And Robert says, "Well, I got that." And, and in this position, I think, yeah. For a second, I thought, okay, well, maybe the idea is bishop takes f3, but if bishop takes f3, yeah, the knight can't recapture because it's pinned, but the queen can recapture. So Robert prepares to toss more wood on the fire, I guess, with rook e8, attacking the queen. Queen takes b5, which for a second I thought bishop c6 was forced, but let's see what's going. Oh, clever. So Nathan's idea was if bishop c6, he has queen f5, forcing the exchange of queens. And then that's pretty much the end of viable play by black. So hence Robert playing queen c7 and knight takes, sorry, knight d4, allowing him to take the rook on a8. Sorry, h1. And let's see, just out of curiosity, let's take a look and see what happens here, if there's a forced win or not.
Queen e8 and taking
Oh,
everything.
yes, queen e8. And then after picking up the queen, the rook, the bishop on h1 gets picked up, and that's the end. That's all she wrote. Okay, so 94, he's trying to get his own threats in, and oh, okay, Robert's on something. that's I don't understand that at all. Okay, so Robert gave up here, and Robert had spent like 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
Oh
and
dear, oh dear, oh
apparently
dear.
we won't have time to look at it tonight, but Nathan was also simuling, so 36 minutes is pretty reasonable time management considering he simuled and he did have to consider the um, complex positions in this game. So
Yes. All right. Well, I think we're done for tonight, if that's okay with everyone. And next week, I wonder what we'll find out what the pairings are when it gets there. What would you say was your game of the week?
I wanted to say David versus Jacob just because it was the only draw. Uh, so I think just for that reason, I want to give it some
Yes.
props. But it maybe wasn't the most accurate game. I did like Jordan versus Jason just because Jordan was on the back foot the whole game, and then he just kind of swindled. And with all due respect, he shouldn't have won that game, but he did swindle Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Noah played well against Thomas, just kind of slowly waiting around until his the two bad nights. One night became good, the other night didn't do much. So I think there's be an interesting case to be made for pretty much every game, but I'll go with the only draw.
Okay. Yeah, my candidates. I think my main candidate would be Thomas versus Noah. I kind of liked how he just. I mean, Trading such wins for the black side of a double E pawn opening is to me seems not as easy, especially when white starts off with a decent position out of the opening, and black just gradually finds a way to outplay him. So I like that. Maybe that's my candidate.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll see. We'll see what treasures they bring for us next week. Any announcements or anything?
Yep. Just the usual. So, as always, check out the Castle Discord. It's linked in the description, so you can easily access that. And then also sponsored by Chess Goals. That's the kind of the openings course by Matt Jensen, and you can save 30% off with the coupon code. And then it's not really so much new anymore, but there's also Tuesday's Thursday Nighter, which is 60 plus 30, so slightly different, but also kind of a high level event. And then the stream is sponsored by Webeccentric.com, and you can use the discount code CASTLE, just like for Chess Goals, for 15% off this time. And Webeccentric is empowering small businesses and startups through tailored digital solutions. They specialize in custom web development, cloud solutions, and digital strategy for small businesses. And they have over 25 years of experience, and they bring enterprise level expertise to businesses of all sizes. We're here to help. You can reach them at webeccentric.com, and you can also shop with them at shop.webeccentric.com. And I'm wearing a shirt today. It's warmer out, so you can afford the luxury of wearing short sleeves again. So make sure to check that out. There's shirts, there's hoodies, if you prefer hoodies. But yeah, I know there was actually saw some of the merch at the Minnesota Open, so hopefully people took it. Yeah, I saw Johnny with the merch, so hopefully people took advantage of that. But you're not too late. You can still pick up some of the merch.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll be seeing everybody next week, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good
See
night,
you guys
everyone.
next